Joe, thanks, worship team. Oops, no signal. Oh, maybe it just didn't. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Good morning. Welcome to this nice passing shower day that was supposed to have been long gone. But I think we're going to look back in about 5 days and go, man, I wish it was 70 degrees and rainy, because I think it's going to be 101. Yeah, that's what I said. So anyway, but 'tis the season, right, in Northern Virginia. But welcome. It's great to be here this morning. Great to be worshiping. Thank you for being here. Those of you who are online, it's great to have you joining us this morning. Welcome back for those of you who have been traveling. We had a lot of families on vacation last week. We've got a lot that I know of that are on vacation this week. So just pray for everybody who's traveling. And just a couple announcements before we do have prayer and then jump into our series. First, we have a business meeting right after this service. It'll be about 15-ish minutes after this service right down front here. The alignment team has a couple of motions that they need to make and ask you to approve. They also just want to give you an update on the church's finances and all of that good stuff. So plan to stick around. Even if you're not an official member and you want to hear what's going on and find out more about our church, this is one of the ways you can do that, and we'd love to have you stay for that. And then just our volunteer appreciation table is back this week. So stop by if you get a chance. We got a whole list of people who volunteer in this church all throughout the church, not just on Sundays, but all throughout the week and the year. So just take a look at those lists and just write a few note cards, just thanking people for what they do. And with that said, I do want us to go to God in prayer this morning. Pray for those who are traveling. Pray for those who are just, again, dealing with medical stuff. Kathy Crawford had knee replacement surgery this week, and that's going well so far. I assume it's still going well, Betty? Awesome. So pray for her as she recovers and starts PT soon and all that. My wife is having minor surgery this week on her thumb. She's an interpreter for the deaf, so it's a kind of a hazard of the job. So she'll be doing that this week. Amy Fitzgerald was hospitalized last Sunday. I've mentioned her before that she's going through chemo and radiation treatments, and she got pneumonia that ended up in the ICU. She's still there, but she is doing much better than she was this time last week. So we are thankful she's off a breathing tube and able to talk and do all of that as well. So pray for her that she just recovers quickly and gets home quickly. Pray for her family as they work alongside of her. Thank you to her small group who just rallied around her and her family this week and supported them in a lot of different ways. So let's just continue to pray for folks who are just struggling with different things in their lives. Let's go to God in prayer. God, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the rain that we need so badly. We thank you for an opportunity just to come and to focus on you a little bit and to just recognize your presence in our lives with everything that we go through, the good stuff and the difficult things. And so we just lift up folks that we know that we care about who are struggling in one way or another. We just pray that they would feel your presence, whether it's just through your spirit speaking to them or whether it's through one of us or someone else just speaking into their lives on your behalf. Now, God, open our hearts and our minds this morning to what you want us to know as we look into this story this morning. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. So we are in part 4 of 6 in our Survivor series, where we're talking about how to outwit, outlast, outplay life's challenges. It's based on the hit TV show Survivor. Survivor, I've mentioned it to you, one of my favorite shows out there. I've watched it almost since it began. I've watched almost every season. They just finished their 50th season, so it's a really popular show. It's a game where contestants just literally try to outwit each other. They try to outlast and outplay each other. And while the game has a lot of parallels to life, I talked about that a little bit last week. One of the things to keep in mind with Survivor is it's still just a game, right? That's what it is at its core. It's a game. Now, one of the biggest questions that contestants on the show of Survivor have to ask themselves, or typically ask themselves at some point or another, is how am I going to play this game as it relates to my integrity, right? Because like so many games that you and I play, whether it's card games or board games or other games, deception, misleading people, breaking promises and commitments, and sometimes just outright lying. That is all a part of the game of Survivor. So players have to decide, what lines are they willing to cross, what lines are they not willing to cross, and all of that. And two of the players whose games really have been defined by this idea of integrity, and they use words like code or true north or honor, things like that, but they're really talking about integrity. Two of the players whose games really centered around this idea of integrity are these two guys right here. This is Coach on the left, right? And this is Joe on the right. And if you've watched Survivor, you know both of these. Coach is actually, his name is Benjamin Wade. Nobody knows him by that name. In fact, I think his name's only mentioned in the show maybe once or twice. Everybody knows him as Coach because he's a coach, among other things. He's a wannabe philosopher, right? He's always quoting philosophers and things like that. He creates his own little sayings and stuff, and he talks about playing the game with honor, right? And with a code, and talks about true north and all of that. But when push comes to shove, Coach will sacrifice his code and his integrity and his honor in a heartbeat to get further in the game. That's just the way he is. He's played Survivor 4 times. He's never won. He was the runner-up in one season, but that's who Coach is. Now, Joe, on the other hand, Joe is a firefighter. He's an assistant fire chief. He's a husband. He's a dad. He's a family guy. He's just an all-around good guy. I loved Joe the first time I saw him play. Almost immediately, I liked Joe. He's played twice. He's made it all the way to the final 3 both times, right? Twice, both times that he played. And he and Coach, they actually played together in the latest season, in season 50, and they developed a super strong alliance with a couple of other players. And that alliance was all about, again, about honor and code and integrity and living up to your commitments. And in one episode, it was so interesting, the tribes, they were split up into pairs. They had to choose to pair up with other people, and they had no idea why they were pairing up or anything. So they just kind of paired up with different people. And then they had to go and they had to compete against each other. These pairs had to compete against each other, and they were competing for immunity from that night's tribal council, from immunity from getting voted out of the game. And it was and then at the vote at the tribal council, the teams are gonna have to vote out one pair, 2 people at one time. It's the first time this particular thing ever happened in the history of Survivor, where a team of 2 were voted out together at the same time. And Joe had promised, he made a commitment to Coach early on, I will never write your name down under any circumstances. And he was committed to that. And Joe is he's somebody who just wants to play this game with as much integrity as is possible. And so at Tribal Council, because of how the teams ended up kind of being paired up, and because one of the teams got immunity and another one had an idol, turned out to be a fake idol, but Joe only has one choice, and that's to vote for Coach and Chrissy, whose Coach is paired up with. And when Joe goes into the voting booth, and some of you who even watched the season may not know this because they didn't show this didn't air. When Joe went into the voting booth, he only wrote down Chrissy's name. He refused to write down both Coach's and Chrissy's name, even though they were voting out an entire pair. In fact, the production team, the producers, had to go back and say, wait a minute, you've got to go back in the voting booth and you've got to vote for 2 people. And so Joe had to go back and he had to write down Coach's name. He was forced to do that. But he didn't want to do that because he wanted to play with as much integrity. And that's just how he played the game. And he was very idealistic in this notion that you could actually play a game of Survivor and not cross those lines of integrity and completely be honest and all of that. And he wouldn't cross those lines. And the reality is, there's no way a player like Joe is ever going to win the show of Survivor. You just can't. You can go all the way like he did to the final 3 because people carried him with them, took him with them because they knew he wasn't going to get votes at the final. But they can go far, but they can't really win the game playing an honest and totally honorable game. And again, Survivor is just a game, right? Deception, blindsiding, backstabbing, all of that is just a part of the game. But let's talk about us for a minute. And let's talk about real life. And let's talk about integrity and how we can win at life. And how we can be followers of Jesus and still outwit, outlast, outplay the game of life and the challenges of life, but do it with our integrity intact. And I just want to give you a really simple definition of integrity. This is what I'm talking about this morning. It's simply doing what you ought to, even if it costs you. Right? That's integrity. It's doing what you ought to do, even if it costs you. And now, this is not only hard in a game like Survivor. It's hard. It's much harder, actually, in the game of life, isn't it? This is not easy. Why? Well, I mean, why is it so hard to live lives and this being our motto or what we follow? Why is it so difficult? Well, it's difficult because of our appetites, right? It's difficult because of our appetites. Our appetites, they actually pose a constant threat to our integrity. Just about every day we have to say no to one in order to protect or satisfy the other. In other words, we have to say no to an appetite sometimes in order to protect our integrity, or we have to say no to our integrity in order to satisfy an appetite. There's this constant tension that we live with every single day at multiple levels all throughout the day. Now, when you think about the term appetite, generally one of the things that comes to mind, probably the first thing that comes to mind when we think about appetites, right, is food, right? And the second one is what? Yeah, nobody wants to say it. It's sex, right? It's food and sex. Those are the two. But we have so many more appetites than just that. Here's a quick list just to kind of get us started. We have an appetite for acceptance, right? We all want to be accepted. And then there's intimacy, there's inclusion. We don't want to be left out. There's respect. We want people to look at us and respect us, maybe admire us. We want recognition. We have an appetite for recognition in our life, whether it's at work or at home or in a sport or whatever. We have an appetite for stuff, more stuff, and then new stuff, right? We want stuff, we want more stuff, and when that gets old, we want some new stuff. An appetite for responsibility. Achievement is a big appetite, especially in the Northern Virginia area, as competitive as everything is. And most of these appetites, if you look at them and if you think about them, most of them, they're reasonable and they're acceptable, aren't they? There's nothing wrong with wanting those things, but every single one of these at some level poses a threat to our integrity. Now, before we get into the Bible story, I want to just give you 3 quick observations about appetites that generally are true. This is going to kind of help set us up for where we're going with this story. But the first one is this, that theists, that's people like most of us. Theists are people who believe in God. That's probably most of us, maybe not all of us in the room. But when it comes to appetites, theists believe that God created them and that sin distorted them. Okay, that's just what we believe. And then the probably everyone can agree on this second one here, that appetites, they're never fully satisfied, right? Our appetites are never fully satisfied, and probably everyone knows, the word that comes to mind, the one word when it comes to appetite is we just want more, right? We just want more of whatever it is. And this idea, this just fuels a discontentment in our lives. We see people who live better, drive better, vacation better, and we think, if I just had what they had, I'd be satisfied. If I just had what they had, I'd be content. But we know there are people in other parts of the world who would look at every one of us and they would say, man, if I just had their lifestyle, if I just had what they had, I'd be okay. I'd be content. So the third thing about appetites is this, that appetites, they always whisper now, right? They never whisper later. An appetite never says, let's just wait till tomorrow. Let's just wait. Let's push this off till down the road, right? That's not your appetite speaking when you hear that. That's something else. Appetites do not like delayed gratification. They tempt us to opt for now over later every time. Our appetites, and again, this isn't a Christian thing. This is just a thing. This is just a human thing, but our appetites, they pose a constant threat to our integrity. Now, there's an Old Testament story that I want to show you this morning, and I love this story, and I'll explain to you, or you'll see in a minute why I love this story so much, because I can identify with it a little bit. But if you grew up in church going to Sunday school and all that, this is probably a pretty familiar story to you. If you didn't grow up in church, you may not have ever heard this story. And I like this story because I think it gives us a great word picture for this tension that we all experience around our appetites and around our integrity. The story takes place in ancient times. It's an Old Testament story. It took place somewhere around 1800 BC, so a long, long time ago. It's the story about two brothers. There's an older brother and a younger brother. The older brother was a hunter. He was a doer. He was an outdoorsman. And the younger brother, he was a thinker. He was a schemer. And he was a really good cook. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Right, Esau and Jacob. Right now, when you hear this story, we typically refer to it as Jacob and Esau, don't we? Yeah. But typically, when you're talking about people, typically you would say the older name first, which is Esau, and you would say the younger name second, which is Jacob. But because of this story, they would forever be known as not Esau and Jacob, but as Jacob and Esau. These two guys, they were Abraham's grandsons. Isaac was their father, and the older brother Esau, he was the oldest, and Esau, he automatically, because he was the oldest, he would inherit something that was known as the birthright, right? Birthright. In other words, he had some special rights that came to him because of his birth order. And in this culture, and this is so foreign to us, we don't even have a reference for this really, but in that culture, if you were the firstborn, you had special privileges that came to you simply because you were born first. For example, you got a double inheritance. Right? And that was a really big deal because back then people had multiple wives, they had tons and tons of children, and so a double inheritance was a really, really big deal. And probably the best thing about being the firstborn son in this culture was you got something that was called judicial authority. And what that meant, what judicial authority was if there was a dispute among the family members, among your siblings and all of that, you got to decide. Right? You got to settle the dispute. Now, that might just be worth bringing back, don't you think? Especially if you're an older brother, right? But you also, if you were the firstborn, you got your father's special blessing, which in this culture was equivalent to God's special blessing. So that's the context around all of this that happened. Is Esau is the oldest. He has this birthright that is his, and it's a really, really big deal. So here's the story. It says, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, that's dad, he loved Esau, but mom, Rebecca, loved Jacob. Now that's part of the problem right there, okay? Just bad parenting to start with. The story continues. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, and he was famished. And this little Hebrew word here means, famished means weary. He was faint, right? Today we would say he was hangry, right? He wasn't sure if he was hungry or angry, so he was hangry. So he comes in, and he's completely famished. His appetite is engaged. His defenses are down. And his senses are heightened by this incredible smelling stew that his brother Jacob is cooking. And he says to Jacob, he says, quick, right? Quick. Now, that's an appetite talking, isn't it? Quick, I've got to have it, and I've got to have it right now. Whenever you're in quick mode, you should tap the brakes, right? Because you are at a point of vulnerability at that point. Quick, he says, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. Now, this is why I love this story, because I was a younger brother, right? I have an older brother and I have a younger sister. I was in the middle. So I had an older brother. And growing up as kids and as teenagers, and those of you who have older siblings, you know what I'm talking about here. But I almost never had any leverage over my older brother, right? I mean, he just got everything and all of that and had everything working for him. But on the few occasions that I did, when I did have some sort of leverage over my brother, I ate it up and I used it to my full advantage. Okay, it was like oh my goodness, he needs something from me, right? I am going to love this. I'm going to milk this. He needs something from me. And if you were a shrewd younger brother like I was, and you know what I'm talking about, but in my house, it would generally sound something like this. Okay, so you don't want mom and dad to know what time you came in last night? Is that it? You don't want them to know, right? You want to make sure they don't find out what time you came in. And if you're a shrewd younger brother, you will always kind of start at the top, right? Like what's the most I can possibly get out of this? And then you just kind of work your way down and find something that you can kind of trade off on. So Jacob's a thinker, and he's shrewd. And so he seizes on this opportunity, and Jacob's is like, you know what? I got some leverage. You either go big or you go home. And so here's what happened. Jacob replies to Esau, and he says, first, he says, sell me your birthright. Sell me your birthright. And we're all like, what? And most of us want to even kind of chuckle at that, right? Because who would sell their birthright for a bowl of soup? I mean, the birthright, that's his whole future. Who in their right mind would trade their future for a bowl of stew? I mean, you wouldn't trade your birthright. You wouldn't trade it for a lifetime of bowls of stew, right? Who in their right mind would trade their future for a bowl of stew? Who in their right mind would trade their integrity for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their self-respect for a bowl of stew? Who would trade the relationship that they value the most, the one that they hope will go the distance? Who would trade that for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their reputation or their career or their opportunities or their future for a bowl of stew? The answer is nobody. And the answer is potentially everybody, right? Now, when you hear it within the context of this story, though, we're like, there's no way I would ever trade a birthright for a bowl of stew. But when it's you and when it's me and it's right there in front of us, it's amazing the bad trades that we're willing to make, right? It's amazing some of the bad trades that we have made, isn't it? This story is so great because it almost gets to the psychology behind how this works and how it works with us. And look what happens next. It says, look, Esau says, look, I'm about to die. I'm about to die. Really? I mean, he just walked into camp. He's been out hunting and all of that. He's not about to die, okay? What he's doing is he's doing what we all do. He's building a case. And he's building a case to justify something. This is a really big deal. This isn't just a bowl of stew. This is life or death here. And Jacob's like, really? Okay, so what's that worth? What are we going to trade for that if it's that important? He's building this case. He's creating a narrative. And he's doing what we all do. He's justifying, right? He's actually just lying. He's just lying to himself about what's actually going on. Look what happens next. This is so similar to things we think and the things that we say when our appetites are inflamed. He says, what good is this birthright to me? It's not that big of a deal. It's just a birthright. I mean, what good is it to me? And I'm going to add two words to the text that aren't in the text, but just to help us focus on what's really going on here. What good is this birthright to me right now? Right? Right now. And Jacob's like, it's not worth anything to you right now. It's not worth anything to you until our father dies. That's later. That's down the road. Don't worry about that. Here's something that Solomon wrote in Proverbs. He said, the integrity of the upright guides them. It guides them. It gets them down the road. But the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. The integrity of the upright guides them. The integrity of the people who take the long ray, the long view, the long look, the integrity of the upright, it will guide them. Later is longer. The upright see right. Those who are bent and focused on now, they just don't see well. And Esau he's looking at right now. And Jacob knows that Esau, as the oldest brother, he has some power. And so he says, swear to me. Swear to me first. So we're told Esau, he swore an oath to him. And an oath was a really big deal in those days. An oath is something you couldn't take back. An oath was something you were dead set committed to. He swore an oath, and he sold or traded his birthright to Jacob. And we're on the outside looking into this story, and we're going, this is insane. This is crazy. But I bet all of us have a mom or a dad or maybe a grandparent, maybe a really good friend who have said at some point, have you really thought that through? Have you really considered what's about to happen? And we're like, yeah, but it's okay. I don't care. It's not right now. And Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then he got up and left. And the stew was gone, and so was his birthright. So was Esau's future. And he traded his future for a bowl of stew. Who would do that? Who would cause someone to do that? What would cause someone to do that? I'll tell you what would cause it. It's an appetite. An appetite that's engaged, that's so inflamed. It's all that we can see. It's right in front of us. And here's how the story ends. And this is so important because it's so instructive. It says, so Esau, he despised his birthright. In other words, he didn't like it. And what this means is he decided it's not that big of a deal. Esau decided, I don't care. It wasn't that important to me to begin with. And again, this is exactly what we do, isn't it? We decide we don't care when it's too late to care. We decided it really wasn't all that valuable when we discounted the value of whatever it was through our actions, and there's nothing we can do about it now. And so to justify or defend ourselves, we say things like, it's not that big of a deal. And so we create a narrative that it wasn't that big of a deal, that it wasn't that big of a loss, that it wasn't that really important to us anyway, and then we believe our own narrative. I mean, what else could I have done? I was dying, Esau would say. What could I have done? I was going to lose my job. Or what else could I have done? If I told them the whole story, there's no way they would have stayed in that relationship with me. I mean, are you kidding? What else could I have done? I didn't have any other choices, and those are the narratives we tell ourselves. And then we believe the story that we make up to justify what we've done because we've decided it's not that big of a deal, and I didn't have a choice anyway. Now, if you know how this story turns out, you know that Jacob's deceit and Esau's short-sightedness, it set in motion a series of events that would negatively affect this family for decades. It wasn't just about the two brothers anymore. It was about everyone who was related to them for generations. So before this day is out, your appetites, my appetites, our appetites, they will compete with our integrity. And we will have to say no to one, either to satisfy the other or to maintain the other. And just as concerning as that is this, that our appetites, they will compete for our futures as well. At some point, at some level, we will be tempted to trade our future for what amounts to a bowl of stew. In that moment, it doesn't look like a bowl of stew. But years later, maybe 3 years later, 5 years later, whatever, you look back and you realize not only is it gone, but what you got in the trade was not worth what you sacrificed in the moment. So here's what I want to leave you with today. What is your bowl of stew? What is your bowl of stew? Not in the past, right now, in your life, right now. What is competing right now with your integrity? What's competing for your preferred future? What's your preferred future is where you see yourself relationally, spiritually, financially, in your career, whatever, in a year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What do you want your future to look like, and what's competing right now with that picture? Let me ask it a different way. What or who is it difficult for you to say no to that you ought to be saying no to? What are you talking yourself into that the people who love you the most would try to talk you out of if they knew you were trying to talk yourself into it? Or maybe it's more overt than that. Maybe they know what you're talking yourself into, and they are currently trying to talk you out of it. And your appetite is whispering to you, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. You need this now. Don't worry about later. And here's what we all have in common with Esau. We have no idea. We have no idea what or who hangs in the balance of our decision of whether or not we trade our future for something that's here that won't be worth the trade later. The reason Esau wasn't concerned is because when he thought about what he was giving up and everything he was giving up, everything was right in front of him. And he wasn't thinking about the future. He wasn't thinking about who it would affect in the future. Jacob knew better. Everybody who hears this story, they know better. And when we hear this story, we're like, who could do that? And the truth is, I could do that. You could do that. Some of us wish we'd heard this message several years ago because we've done that. So here's the challenge. Would you be willing to decide once and for all, right now, that knowing what's at stake in terms of the future, I will not trade what I value most for something that I have an appetite for right now. I'm not going to trade what I value most, my preferred future, God's preferred future for me. I'm not going to trade what I value most for something that's just an appetite right now. And then would you just do what you ought to do, even if it costs you? If you do, you'll be glad you did. The people who love you most, who depend on you the most, they'll be glad you did. So what is it? What is your bowl of stew? Don't trade your future for a bowl of stew. Just do what you ought to do. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for this story, as just as bad of a story as it is, as we look at it, and just the difficulties and the struggles and just the negative things that came out of it. I thank you that we have it as an example of what not to do. And God, every one of us, we have values in our lives. We have things that we know are important to us. We have lines that we don't want to cross, and we think we never would. But the reality is we all can. That when those appetites get inflamed, when there are things that just look so attractive that are right in front of us right here and now, the future seems so far away that it couldn't possibly be affected. So God, I pray that we would learn from this story. I pray that we would recognize when our appetites are whispering to us now. We would tap those brakes, and we would do what Solomon says. We would have the long view, and we would allow that to influence us and guide us. Give us the strength to do what we ought to do, even when it costs us. In Christ's name I pray, amen. Hey, don't forget to sign some notes for our volunteers on your way out. Hope you have a great week. If you don't know somebody, introduce yourself to somebody. Let's stand and sing one more time as we head out.